And we are so excited to be hosting this kind of this academy class with somebody who is an absolute titan in the music industry. He is currently an agent at UTA. He is an incredible guy who I'm so excited for you guys to hear his story, to interact with him. He represents, here's the introduction. He represents clients like Lil Wayne and the Kid LAROI. I'm not gonna go on with all the other clients that he represents because he pretty much represents every hip hop performer that you guys know. He was recently honored as the R&B at Billboard's annual R&B Hip Hop Executive Power Players list in 2022 and named a member of XXL's 2023 awards board. And we are so incredibly lucky and grateful to the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Mike G. Oh wait, now he's on another thing. Now he's not even there. Okay, beautiful.
I'm here now. All right, that's a better reveal. I appreciate the very kind intro. Appreciate that.
Thank you. We got to work on our music and for the intros. So Mike, I just without I know I told you a little bit about what we're doing here, but you probably don't know that much because you're super busy. So I want to kind of thank you for taking the time out and doing this. I'll start off with just a question. We love high school, right? So we're American High. The reason why we love high school so much, we decided to go buy a high school and make everything in high school. Part of the reason is it represents firsts, right? It's the first time you fall in love. It's the first time you discover who your friends are and you figure out who you are. And all the stakes are so high because that's where you're kind of making a decision of who you're going to be for the rest of your life. So my question is, what was that moment? Was it in high school or wasn't in high school where you were like, this is it, the music, this is the thing. This is that moment I remember where I want to be in the music industry.
It's a great question. I mean, obviously I went to high school in the 90s. So most of everyone that's on the Zoom wasn't born. Jeremy, I know you share that with me because I think we're similar in age. But to me, the 90s, there were two things I loved. It was basketball and it was hip hop and R&B. Those were the two things I was obsessed. And during that time, I mean, there were so many artists that we speak about today, Tupac and Biggie and DMX and Jay-Z, who's still doing his thing. So I always wanted to do something either in sports or music, and music won. So those were my real two passions in high school.
What was your sport of choice?
Basketball, number one to play, but I'm a huge football fan as well. So those were always the two sports.
Amazing. Did you play in high school?
I played in high school. Funny enough, I played in high school. I played 1 year in junior college. And then really what I wanted to do is I wanted to get into coaching. So I actually people don't know this. And I don't think most people at the agency know this. I actually coached 1 year in the semi-pros in the ABA. I coached 1 year in JUCO. I coached a few recreational leagues. And that's really the path I really wanted to take. So, but what I learned, I'm everything you learn in life as far as a skill set, you can always apply. So that was actually really important to me because coaching and talking to athletes and understanding the human mind and psychology and just working with different types of talent is a skill set. So whenever you represent, whether it's an emerging artist, a high level artist, I actually use that skill set. It's really something I learned, how to talk to athletes, how to talk to artists. It's very similar. So it actually did help.
Just so you know, we brought you on here so we could make you an official offer to be the first coach of the American High official basketball team. So it's not too late. You don't have to decide right now, but it's a pretty good second career if you decide. You're here. The offer's stand.
Well, I got 3 years left on my deal, so we should definitely talk.
I love it. So what was that first weigh in? I mean, most of the people in our class here are students or recently graduated. What was the thing that was your way in? What was that moment where you kind of got that break? What was it?
Right out of college, I got a job working at the time. It was called Clear Channel Communications. So we're going back to 2000, and I got into, surprisingly, I was selling advertising time at a radio station in Los Angeles. So I actually learned how to sell for the first 9 years of my career. I worked at Coast 103.5, which is a adult contemporary radio station in Los Angeles. I launched a classic rock station. And then the last 2 years, from '07 to '09, I worked at the station called Power 106, which is really like at the time, a powerhouse hip hop radio station in Los Angeles. So during that era, obviously, I wanted to make a transition. It was actually a great career from a paying perspective, because in sales, you make what you get. So, but I was watching a lot of Entourage, and it started like the lifestyle in LA. The whole thing just hit home because I'm from LA and I'm born and raised in LA. So I'm like, man, I really want to start like representing talent. I don't know how to do that. So I just started representing these DJs that worked at Power 106. And I used to go out so much to all the clubs and all the parties. So I would just book these DJs literally to pay for my bar tab.
Were you, was that like Big Boy in the morning time? Was that like that around that time?
It was that time. It was exactly that time.
Boy, I'm of your, I graduated and got to LA in '98, and right when kind of right when Eminem was coming out of the scene, and Snoop and Dre, when that album kind of was playing all the time on Power. So did you start like Power, or you started representing that?
I just started representing just DJs at events. I was just starting to book gigs. And at the time, one of the DJs, still on air till today, DJ Sour Milk, wanted to introduce me to this artist who had a song called We Run LA. And it was an independent artist. And I'd never managed an artist. I was literally working at the station. I was managing a few DJs. He brings me this artist. I like the artist right away. I'm like, okay, I know business. I'm willing to learn if this guy's willing to take a chance. And we hit it off. Lo and behold, that record, We Run LA, within 30 days became one of the biggest records in the history of LA radio till today. Shards of Sunset, I don't know if that show's still on or not, licenses the record. Like, that's their theme song. So when that happened, I'm like, okay, this is great. Like, I think I could actually transition careers. But, one of the biggest things is, at that time when I was in radio, I was making six figures. I was doing very, very well. So I wanted to leave, and I wanted to risk it for a career that I didn't know that was going to pan out or not. So it really was like a huge, huge risk. But I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to go full force, and I'm just going to try to survive the first couple of years and make it. And that really is what got me into the music industry. The DJs, meeting that artist, and that record was so big at the time.
So just one question. You said you started in sales, right? You spent all this time. Like, for me, I think the skills of being a salesperson is probably the most important skill one could have in any industry, but specifically in our industry. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how have you applied? I mean, obviously, like, if you're taking your coaching background, how have you applied it to how have you applied your sales stuff into
the background? The way I've applied my sales background is just being interpersonal with people, listening to people. Sales is it's a skill. It's definitely a skill, and definitely the skill is definitely when you work at an agency, it is selling 24/7, because we're selling our talent, we're selling our writers, producers, everything at all times. But really, it just taught me just human interaction, communication, and follow through. Just be thorough. And I realized a lot of people in my industry are not very thorough. So it was just getting back to people, it was communicating people, it was creating relationships. Because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're in the human business. whatever we sell, we sell. I could sell you an artist. I could sell you radio time. I could sell you a script. At the end of the day, it's all comes down to relationships. It comes down to how you treat people and how you make people feel. Um, you know, our CEO, Jeremy Zimmer, told me a long time ago, people will always remember how you make them feel in the room. And, that stays with me because, I want to at the end of the day, it's really about nourishing your relationships because when you do get in the industry, it's a small circle. So you want to treat everybody equal. So that skill helped me develop really my follow through, the schmoozing part, the lunches, the hangs, all that. But I like that. It's better than a regular 9 to 5. So
Well, one thing I want to kind of just point out and compliment you on, and I'll share this with the group. I've been in this business for a really, really long time, and I've dealt with agents and studio execs, and I've done the lunches and the things. And when I was introduced to Mike by my point agents to say, okay, we just acquired this guy's company, and like I don't really understand what he does, but he's this cool guy who like drives a Rolls Royce and all this stuff. Like just got to meet him. You got to meet him. And I have that relationship. So the relationship I have with my particular agent is something that I've spent 25 years building. He's introduced me and our company, and UTA introduced us to different companies, different execs and different things, and going on pitches. And there are so many people who I meet with, or companies who I meet with, who have no idea what it is, what the meeting is, so that they go in and and they don't know, and they're not really good at kind of even like faking it. My first meeting and conversation with you was so it felt so real and so genuine. And then I was like, oh, this guy's kind of good at a good schmoozer. He's good at faking it. I was like, I'm good at faking it too. Whatever. But the follow-up has been so incredible, and the personal touch. And, at some point, Mike, I'm going to tell you the what's going to come out of the Rolling Loud situation. At some point, once the writer strike is done, we're going to talk about that. But what you did for me and my son, in terms of getting us into Rolling Loud, which I'd never heard of, was so incredible. And it's something that it was such a simple thing for someone like you to do. But the fact that you took care of it, it's something like for me that I do those things for people all the time with no like expectations and when I see somebody do that personally for me, it's one of those things that's just like, it's amazing. I want to thank you just for that. And it's just such an incredible, it's just so incredible. I'm going to turn to, I've been literally dominating this and I won't let him speak, but Will, please go ahead and jump in and ask a question.
Mike G, let's get
So anyway, here's the thing. I'm just gonna,
I mean, coming at it from a younger guy's point of view.
you can insult him right away. By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Literally before we came in here, I said I came on and I was like, I'm Mike G and I get respect. And everybody looked at me. Oh, there we go. Will wasn't here, but all these, and Julie was here, and Tristan was here. And they were like, oh, you never, I'm like, you don't know this song? You don't know what this is? So I stopped everything and I played Paul Revere for everybody, and I made everybody put all their stuff down. And I'm like, you have to just play this song. And we played the whole thing. Everybody looking at me like, when is it going to end? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Let's take a second. Anyway, Will.
I had that whole song memorized. I never made the Mike G connection. What I was saying is, I'm sure many people on this and who will be listening have questions as to how to break into it. You said you went to college. My knee-jerk reaction and question was, outside of networking and being a great salesperson, what skills do you need to be a top rep in music? Is it necessary to have understanding of how the studio sessions work? Is it necessary to have a touring background? What is the most useful path that someone who's in maybe 18 or 20 could start right now to kind of have the right skill set?
Absolutely. There's so many different positions in music, right? So if it comes down to wanting to A&R records and work on records, that's a skill set. If it's touring, it's honestly agenting. If it's management, it's a little bit of everything. But it's just like knocking on doors and being just, obviously I feel the best way to get in is always through a referral or a recommendation. But I mean, I think the best way, let's say if you want to go be an A&R at a record label, they have programs all the time to go there and intern. You just have to be thorough. You have to be ferociously persistent and relentlessly charming about it, right? You just have to like want it.
I'm sure someone else probably has the same question. What is A&R?
It's really like the position as far as like you help conceptualize and create the record. So if I sign an artist, I am setting up the sessions. I'm getting the writers. I'm getting the producers. Depending if the artist does write or not, some artists write, some artists need writers. And you're putting the creativity. You're putting the project together. Like you are putting the song together. So that's the A&R process.
I'm going to just jump in and say, if anyone like just to open this up, just raise your hand and we'll probably see it. We could call it. Rose, you'll see the hand raise, right? Can you call on people?
Yes.
So if you have a question for Mike G, just raise your hand. But while we're looking at the questions, I'm going to ask you a question that I struggle with. I imagine we're roughly the same age. We're old people to Will.
I knew the song. Come on.
How do you find balance how do you find balance? Have you felt like, are you married? Do you have a family? Is it something that, because I look back at, certain decisions I made when I was younger, certain choices, especially when I'm always like, when I'm dealing with kids who are just graduating right now and kind of trying to decide on what their like future is. How do you find balance? What's your answer to that?
Every stage of my career, it's changed. So in the beginning, when I got into music after radio, I was getting divorced. So I threw myself into my career. Like that's all I cared about. And I was willing to sacrifice, and I don't recommend this. This is what I did. My physical health, my sleep, anything, just to make sure I was successful and that I never went back to radio. Obviously, as you get older, you want to take care of yourself. It's not the same thing when you're in your 20s or 30s. But, now my regimen's completely different. Like I'm up at 4:45 in the morning. I'm on the treadmill at 5. I meditate at 5:20. I'm back in the gym at 6. I give myself like 2 to 2.5 hours every day to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. Because in my business and in my line of work, when you're representing talent, all you do is give. You're giving to your artist, you're giving to your talent. It's give. So you got to make sure you take care of yourself. I wish I did a better job at that. At one time I managed Chris Brown for 5 years before I became an agent, and I was consumed for 5 years. Financially, it was great, but physically, I probably wasn't in the best shape of my life, physically and mentally. And you learn that as you get older. But balance is key. I think I do it better now, obviously in my 40s than I did in my 30s, and my 20s, it didn't even count. Because you're invincible in your 20s. But balance is definitely key. It's definitely key for that. So hopefully I answered that question.
You definitely, you would probably give the same answer. It was probably the same answer that I may have been given. It's a hard question it's definitely a hard question to answer, because there are a lot of people who talk about like work-life balance and kind of, coming out like graduating from college and like finding their like, focusing on like their personal life and their health and all that stuff. And it's so, I literally before we hopped on, I was telling somebody, I'm like, who was coughing because she'd been like working all like nonstop. I was like, stop, take a nap, come back in 3 days. Like it's not, none of this is that important if you're like your health. But at the same time,
She's fired.
Yeah, she's fired. Exactly. No. But at the same time, there is that thing where it's like I'm giving that, we're looking at it from a perspective of, we sacrificed our relationships, we've sacrificed our, I mean, I don't even know, I have 4 kids. I don't even remember like their names half the time. I'm kidding, that's a joke. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. We sacrifice a lot, and especially when I was younger. So it's hard to like really give that advice in earnest. So I just was curious about your perspective on it.
The mornings are key for me. This mornings are key. And if you could put your phone away when you get home, which is very, very hard, it helps. You know, you could actually sleep decent. But I've struggled with it. Like it was hard. Like last year, I struggled with it too mentally. Like I had a very successful year, but you get burnt out, you know, like it's normal. It's normal. You could be at the highest of highs, the lows of low. You still go through trials and tribulations mentally and physically because it's a tough business, you know, so taking care of yourself is key. I wish I knew that earlier in my career, but I'm good now.
Question?
Got a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, like, we were talking about coming out of college and trying to get inside the industry. So what do you think the industry usually misses in this young applicants? Like, what would you be searching for, or what are you usually expecting to see more in us that are just like recently applying?
I can answer that, especially from the agency's perspective, because we get a lot of the young, like, you know, young students coming into intern. And a lot of times it's like, for me, it's like, I want to be here. This is what I want to do for a living. Even if it's not going to be your career in 5 years, to me, like, focus and dedication is the biggest thing if someone's going to end up on my desk. Like, I'm here, and I'm not here to take, I'm here to add to your team. I think that's what a lot of people in the music industry miss. Everybody wants to get into music because they think it's the lifestyle and it's cool on Instagram. But if you really want to be part of an organization, an agency, a record label, you've got to offer something, you know? And I think we as executives have to recognize that, and we have to do a better job as far as grooming the next generation, right? It's balance and everything. But to me, I think the challenge is, and I don't know, Jeremy, maybe you deal with this with some of the younger people you work with. Everybody wants to do 100 different things. And I want people that work with me, I want them like to become agents. Like, that's the career I choose. This is the path I want to go down. To me, it's really about dedication.
Matt, do you have a question?
I do. Hi, Mike. I'm Matt. I work at American High with Will and Jeremy. I'm somebody who's always been extremely driven by music. If filmmaking and movies are my greatest passion, I would consider music my greatest hobby and my second passion, right? So having said that, I'm not looking for a career that ends in the music space, but I wanted to ask you, how helpful is it to know the language, even if you're a creative on the other side, like to know how to speak music, to know how to be a little more personalized and intimate, and make it clear that your vision as a creative can make sense to the people who are going to bring the musical side of it to life?
It's so key. It's so key because music is so niche, and when you're dealing with different executives or managers, when you can relate, when you can actually know their business and talk their language, it's so key. It's similar to like if a music executive knows the film world, and we could speak your language. You're like, oh, this guy really knows what he's talking. He gets it, right? Oh, he gets how a project is, like, you know, what it takes to make a project. He gets what it takes, like, to put a movie together. So, I mean, it does help. It does help, you know. And that's why I think sometimes, even if you come to the agency and you don't become an agent, it actually is a really good learning place, because you do learn every area of entertainment. You can learn music, you can learn TV, you can learn film, you can learn branding, you can learn digital. it's a great university because I've seen a lot of people come sit on my desk and they're like, you know what? We love you, but we don't want to be an agent. We're going to go work at a record company, or we're going to go manage, or we're going to do, and I love that because that it's not for everybody. Right. But there's always something. And if your passion is music, there's always something in industry you can do, whether it's representing songwriters and producers or artists. So yeah, definitely. I think whenever you're just well-versed in every area, it makes things key.
Mike, I started my career at an agency. I worked at CAA for right out of college without really knowing what I was in a place where I loved movies. But I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I was like, oh, go work at an agency. I was like, great. And you come back to like wanting to be there. I think that, and looking back at what I did when I was at CA, when I just first started, and something you just said was of like that thing of just being so psyched at all times. Like I didn't leave. I literally I was first one there. I was like, I never wore a tie in my life. And the idea, you had to wear a tie back then and roll up your sleeves, and there were bagels in them. And I just loved answering the phone, and I loved opening scripts and being like, oh my gosh, this is how a movie's made. And answering the phone constantly, and directors are on the other line. And I once answered a call, and it was Al Pacino calling for another agent. He died. He was sent to me, and it just, at every moment there, I just loved it. And I, again, didn't really know what I wanted to do when I first came in, because I was a kid and just got out of college. I just know I loved movies. By the way, I still have no idea what I want to do. So, but just the idea, I would second that thought of just wanting to be where you are and wanting to give versus wanting to take. So, yeah. Any other questions? I'll go if nobody's jumping in, and this is kind of this is a little bit of in part of what you've started, Will, with the digital and the TikTok and the American High Shorts. How are you seeing? I mean, you started in the 90s, like that, on the radio, as a way to get your clients out there, and as a kind of that a lot's changed since the 90s. But when you kind of say it, when you tell me how you started, and we're kind of thinking about TikTok and all that, it sort of sounds like it's just a different vehicle, like it's just a new form of sales. So, but I'd love to hear your perspective on how technology has changed the game in this.
Absolutely. I think you always have to embrace change. I think the old heads that don't embrace change get left behind. So I'm all about technology. I'm all about AI. I'm all about advancing. I think even all the way to 2010, 2011, even to 2015, radio was the number one vehicle to break an artist. So you needed to get an artist on radio. You needed to push the radio and the marketing, and then you would go on tour. Now it's different, because now I actually think, I don't want to say it's easier, but with TikTok and social media, as an artist, you can really control your own platform. I've seen some amazing independent artists really just work all those platforms to really maximize where they are in their career. And I think it has changed the game. It's definitely changed the game with the record labels, because nowadays it's I think back in the days, people would really sign off talent and, hey, I really believe this is a star. We're going to make this into a star. And now I believe record labels do look at numbers, and they do look at Spotify monthly listeners, and TikTok is such a big platform. And it's just finding that balance, that middle balance, where you could still find an artist that could be a career artist and not just a TikTok artist for one record or two records. So it has changed. It's changed in the sense as far as signing artists on the record side. But as far as on the touring side, I've seen artists that have 200,000 followers could probably sell more tickets than someone that has 20 million followers, because their fans are engaged, right? It's all about the engagement. So it's changed. I try to look at all all platforms and find a balance. I just don't want to sign someone just because they have crazy numbers. Obviously that gets your attention, but at the same time, you do want to sign talent, and I do want to sign career artists.
Furco's iPhone. Do you have a question?
Yeah, yeah, kind of a specific question, but I think all three of you might be able to answer. So I go by Furco. I'm a hip hop and pop artist from here in Syracuse. Been making music for about 10 years. Recently, I just got my single called Yellow Bird placed in an Amazon Prime movie, which is also called Yellow Bird. Kind of director's wife hit me up, placed it in the movie. But I guess my question for you guys that's been on my mind a lot lately is how an artist should go about sync deals and sync placements. You know, what are good music libraries to submit to, how to go about pitching. Because mine wasn't necessarily a sync placement, sync deal type of thing. Mine was more director's wife hitting me up, placing it in the movie. But yeah, I guess I'm just curious on how to go about that.
I'll just
Jeremy,
I'm just gonna jump
Yeah.
in and say that you should clarify the director's wife hitting you up several times, just because I know it's a sensitive area sometimes with the raps.
Right.
No, I would love to let Mike answer this question if because you probably know this on the deal front more than I do.
Yeah, it's easier to do when you're independent, right? Because we don't have to clear with the recording company. So I know the way we usually structure it is if we have independent artists, we try to get as many records as we can and we submit them to all the music supervisors. So if you were, I don't know who your team is, or if you're just doing everything on your own, but
Yeah, pretty
I
much
would
just
do
me.
it's just you, right? So I would do some real research and find out different music supervisors, and you'll be surprised. If you send records and your profile and your a lot of times they don't want to deal with the big recording companies and pay their clearance fees, and they'd rather deal with the independent artists direct. So that's
Right.
how we've done it internally. So, and a lot of it,
Okay.
sometimes you hear a record on TikTok or you hear a record on Spotify, they're just going to reach out to you on Instagram. Right. But
Well,
it's really
that's
the
what I've been
music
seeing it a
supervisors.
lot is the TikTok. I've been seeing a lot of people talk about sync placements, this and this, and then like talking about music libraries. But I see a lot of people are like secret about it. They want you to sign up for their classes and stuff. So I guess I just really don't know about the music libraries. But what you just said makes a lot of sense.
And there are companies, like if you don't have a publishing deal, like publishers usually will shop your records, right? They'll
Right.
try to get you sync deals. But if you want, I mean, right now, like you're still building, so you probably wouldn't want to do a publishing deal right now. But there are
Mhm.
admin deals where publishing companies can service you like you're signed to them, but they only take administrative fees, and they would service your record. There's companies that do that.
Right.
So
Is it Furco? Is it Furco? Say your name one more time.
Last name is Furco. That's what I go by my artist name. You can call me Jacob if you want to. Either one.
So Jacob, I would answer on the side of like a lot of times what I'll say in terms of somebody who's trying to be a writer and trying to sell their scripts and do all that stuff. A lot of times people are come to me and they're like, how do we get an agent? How do we get this thing? How do we get it out? Like, how do we get hooked up? How do we network? I want to show this thing. And I would just say, well, oh, do you have a finished script? And people are like,
Right.
but I got an amazing idea and I'm on page 63 and I'm like, I just finished the first draft. And like, I think and I was like, oh, well, why don't you give it to like 3 people and get their feedback and like, and then just when you build that house, focus on building that house, focus on focus on that music and make that music undeniable. When you write a song,
Right.
you make a song or 10 songs, and one of them is undeniable. Make 100 songs. Focus on that. Focus on your craft. Make it great. Start performing. Go perform live. Put your stuff out there. Like just start getting your stuff out there. But this is just me. Like, I wouldn't be worrying about the networking part just now.
For
Like,
sure. For sure.
like ran into somebody like somebody like hit you up like to get you. That's amazing. but like do it like just go
Keep letting it come like that.
go stay in the lab,
Yeah, yeah.
and then people are gonna come to you. That's what
For sure. Thank you.
Maria, do you have a question?
I do. So we were talking about TikTok, and I was wondering, like, what about the shorter version of music? Like the idea of now we are just consuming this short form of music. Like, does that impact in the creative process? And if so, how?
I think it does impact in the creative process. I think some artists make records for TikTok because they want the numbers, right? I don't try to personally sign those artists because I want an artist that's going to be able to sell out arenas one day. So I want I want a great record that can be successful on TikTok and successful on all the platforms. But yeah, I do think, TikTok really dominates the recording industry. Like it probably impacts record labels more than it impacts my business, right? But because they're basing a lot of their marketing budgets and their advertising budgets on TikTok. So, but I do think so. I think a lot of records sometimes. I mean, here's a really good example of a really good record that TikTok helped. Forgot the name of the record. Lizzo had that single that when it first came out last year, it didn't even break the charts. And then it went viral on TikTok and it was the #1 record in America. And then she toured arenas after. So in that specific case, TikTok helped. But yeah, I do think it does impact the creative process. Absolutely. For some artists, not all artists.
Matt, what about you?
All right, I'm back. If money or like ROI on a certain client wasn't a factor, who in all of music history, living or dead, would you have wanted to represent or to rap?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. Living or dead?
Excluding, I'm gonna just put you just because I know Mike's an amazing representative. So I'm going to say excluding your current or former clients. So,
I would agree. Thanks for that. Thanks for that clarification.
All right. So I think I would want to represent Elvis, and I'll tell you why. Because Elvis never toured internationally. He never toured Europe. He never toured Asia. He never touched any of those territories. And if you watch the movie, you know why. But I think that would have been an amazing opportunity to get a chance to tour Elvis.
For the group here, Elvis Presley was an artist who was in. I'm just kidding.
They better know who Elvis Presley is.
That's a pretty incredible answer. I love that.
Furco, what about you?
I just never took the raise hand off. My bad.
No, all good. Anybody else?
I'll think of another question though.
I'll ask a question while people are thinking. You mentioned technology and making sure to keep up with technology, and we're doing a ton of stuff and investigating into like the world of AI and how it's affecting our change. Obviously the Writers Guild and actors, like everybody's out there. I'm on a gazillion emails and text chains about like the different sides of every argument and all the legal battles and all that stuff. What are your thoughts of a like AI music company like Boomy, and how is that what it's called, Boomy, and how it's where you kind of can create music and own it and all that jazz.
So I haven't been on Boomy, so I'm gonna ask a question. Does it replicate like vocals of an artist, or is it original music?
I believe you're creating original music, but you can replicate pretty much anybody on it. Yeah.
So if you replicate an artist, I think the artist should be compensated. Like that's 100%. Like that's basically plagiarism. But I mean, look, I do like AI. I embrace the technology, and if it's original music and it can inspire, if an artist uses that to inspire, to get in the studio and create more records, I think it's just another vehicle, another tool that should be embraced. I wouldn't fight it. I would embrace it, but use it strategically.
there was an artist, and I'm going to be forgetting who, like that, what the name of the artist, who made a deal where they said anybody could create
Grimes.
right? So Grimes made a deal that said anybody could use my voice. I just get 50%. Just give me, give me a percentage and go have fun. I don't know if, like, you might know if that's been successful or that's where, if anybody's following through on that. I honestly don't know. I just, when I heard that, I was like, oh, that seems to be the right model for, like, the morally correct model is somehow, like, this thing is here, right? It's here. People are doing it. Lawyers are gonna be fighting for a long time. But if I'm recreating Elvis, right, and I'm having Elvis sing Eminem, or I'm writing a song for Elvis to sing and I'm putting it out there, is the Elvis Presley estate going to be making some of that money? I don't know the answer. Where do you see that? Where do you see it going on?
It's like when Napster was to the recording companies. Like, I don't see the recording companies losing that. Eventually they're going to get compensated. They don't lose. They're too big to lose. Right. And most of those big artists are signed. Like, their recording agreements are with Sony or Warner or Interscope or Universal. So I think that's going to be more their battle, So, but I do like that model. Like, definitely the artist should be compensated. By the way, I'd love to be in the middle of those deals and commission those deals. That'd be great. That's another revenue stream. So it's a good idea. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's yours. Take it. Anybody else have?
Matt, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm sucking up the oxygen, but I just remember when I was a kid, I read about I want to say it was like 07 or so. Radiohead released In Rainbows, and the payment plan for it was completely donation based if you wanted, right? And you could donate any amount of money after the album was released to support the artist. Radiohead was huge by that time already, but do you see a world now where that level of, like, fan engagement and kind of community outreach makes up the lost cost by paying dividends later with, like, the tour or the loyalty that the fans have? Do you see that anything like that still happening or reemerging, where it's a little more liberating and kind of flexible as far as the way that you retain fans and gain new ones like that?
I haven't seen anything to that capacity. And I don't even think it's the same thing, but the closest thing I've seen is whether some artists donate a lot of their ticket fees towards their charity of choice or towards, along those lines. When it comes to, like, your music, that's always a little bit tougher because the recording company owns the masters. So it's what the record label is willing to. I'm sure the artist just wants to get the music out there and promote and market the music, but it comes down to the label, right? So, I mean, I think it's great to keep your fans involved and to always reward your fans and stay engaged with your fans. I think you could do things like that on your social media platform and be able to touch your fans maybe in a different way, but definitely engage with them and make them feel like they're part of the process and that you care about them, whether it's gifting them with tour tickets or merch or something personal. So, but I love that concept and I love that idea.
Madeline, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious about, I know you mentioned, like, keeping up with the times is really important and, like, the new technology and all the things, but, like, I really want to know your thoughts on, like, the physical media versus streaming debate, because I definitely think it's probably easier to, like, break out as an artist with streaming, but, like, to be, like, successful and, like, hold that, maybe harder with the, like, you don't go out and buy, people don't go out and buy, like, CDs anymore, like, most people don't. So I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
It's a great question. And the advice I always give to artists that are breaking on all their streaming platforms is you have to touch the fans. This is why I think live is so important in our business. Whether you're playing in a room with the capacity is 50 people, 100 people, or 200 people, you have to touch the fans. That's what's going to help create longevity for an artist. Like for instance, Furco is from Syracuse. If I was Furco, I would do a hometown show in Syracuse, get home behind you. Then I would start working the Northeast area, word of mouth, social media, those type of platforms are going to help market your music. But I think the live side is so essential. It's so essential because, you can stream, but is someone willing to pay $25 to go see you live? That's the fan you want. Because that's what's going to create, 80% of the revenue for an artist after they do their publishing deal and their recording deal is going to be touring. So I think that's the key thing. Go touch the fans, go play your hometown shows, find a way to get on tour, whether sometimes touring is expensive in the beginning because you just want to survive, but you're touching so many people that it does create a fan base for you. Like you could win, talent always wins at the end. And when you see somebody live, eventually the platforms are going to promote that. Like it's going to go, I don't want to say it's going to go viral, but you give yourself a better chance of success.
Maria, go ahead.
You mentioned earlier about like your healthcare routine, I guess. I wanted to know like the more business side of your routine, like what would a daily life of an agent look like?
That's a good question. You have all the good questions, Maria. Well, what I always do is I always have my roster in front of me every day. That way I know I'm paying attention to everybody. And what I try to do is when I get to the office, I like writing out, this is me personally, I like writing out the first 2 hours of my day. So I'll tell myself if I'm in here at 9:30, from 9:30 to 9:45, I'm going to clean my email inbox. From 9:45 to 10:05 to 20 minutes, I'm going to focus on Lil Wayne and see if I need anything to do with his business. Do I need to get back to people? And then I'll break them into 20-minute increments with just different clients. That way I know I've touched every client. And by the time it's noon, I'm like, okay, I've worked on 7 to 8 different clients. I usually have no more than 2 meetings per day past 1 o'clock. I won't, during COVID, we were on Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. And I just realized I'm on way too many Zooms. I got to still service clients. I still got to go sign clients. So that's pretty much my routine. I try to break it. I got to write everything down. I'm like a visual person or else I don't feel like I'm productive by the end of the day. So, and no more than 2 meetings and 2 strategic meetings, not 2 waste my time meetings. It's got to be a real meeting. So
I have a question for you.
That's my crazy routine.
I have a question for you. What's been the most rewarding part of your career, whether it was a certain artist's tour or whatever it was? I'm just curious, what's been the most rewarding part of it? Because I'd imagine there was lots of exciting things you've gotten to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a lot of great moments, right? I think when when I signed Kid LAROI and took him back to Australia for the first time, where he was actually like a superstar, going back home for the first time with him taking me to the Boys and Girls Club where he grew up, and then doing multiple sold out arena shows for the first time in front of his grandparents and his mom and dad. I mean, that's rewarding because, you're part of that process. But then again, this year, I did a tour with Lil Wayne. He hasn't toured in a while. And, he's a legend. And the way I work with Wayne is different than how I work with LAROI, who was a young man. And it was amazing to see the resurgence Wayne had. He's on the cover of Billboard this year. It came out yesterday and he's working on his new album. So there's been some great moments, especially when I'm invested in the artist as a person. That's what I love. I love it. The best relationships in our businesses, we're working together. You don't want to feel like you're working for someone, even though at the end of the day, we're in the service business. I want to feel like I have a partner and then we're in this together. And everyone appreciates everyone.
That's awesome. Grace, what
Well,
about you?
I got another one. I got one more. I forgot to tell you. It was iHeart Awards 2016. I was managing Chris Brown. And every year we would go up against Beyonce and we would always lose to Beyonce because Beyonce is Beyonce. And in 2016 at the iHeart Award Festival, I didn't know we were going to win. And I was shocked. And I'm like, I can't believe we beat Beyonce that year. That actually was pretty cool because we took so many L's to her. We were just so we were used to losing her all the time. So
You're eat shit, Beyonce, or no?
We're a little more gracious than that, but we were pumped up. So that was fun. That actually was a good feeling.
That sounds.
Beyonce didn't have the best video of the year that year. Great. Go ahead. Sorry.
You have a lot of different clients, but I was curious, like when you are like looking for new artists, what are the top 5 qualities you look for in an artist? Because
Yeah, great question. Obviously you want to look for talent, right? Like talent is like undeniable. Someone that has a vision, someone that has conviction, someone that has intention as far as like when they put their music out. Second key thing is their team, because at the end of the day, you're working with their team. I can't tell you how many artists that I've worked with that are amazing artists, but their teams are just not it. And it kills their career, because at the end of the day, your team is the one having all the conversations. So I look for talent. The team thing is really big. I definitely look for work ethic, someone that's obsessed with their craft. I really want to work with people that want to be the best. Like, if you're an emerging artist and you're a new artist, you got to believe that I'm better than Drake. Like, I'm better than Wayne. Like, you have to have that conviction. If you don't, like half the battle is in your mind, right? Like you got to be your own biggest fan, and you have to believe it. And you almost have to manifest that. So I look for drive. Drive is big for me. Those are the 3. I know you asked for 5.
We'll take 3. I think 3 is a
3 is good.
Well, just give us your top 27 moment. No, I'm kidding. That was that was an amazing question and an amazing answer. I would just like to take this moment to just say thank you for coming on here. You've lent us so much of your time and your insight already. And I know that mornings are for you and your phone is off. So I want to let you get back to your team.
Hopefully I answered these amazing questions to the best of my ability, but Jeremy will tell me after if I did well or not. So he's pretty honest. So
no, you did incredible. Thank you. And thank you everybody for coming. And I'll give you a call afterwards.